Hello, everybody. My name is Chika Sehoole from the University of Pretoria in South Africa. It's great to be part of this conversation. I will enter this conversation by starting with, how colonial education is experienced in South Africa, but also on the African continent. Colonial education is renowned for its depiction of the West or of Europe as great, and the absence of Black people or African people in the text reinforces this particular narrative of the superiority of the West and of Europe. And students, the younger generation these days, are very much concerned about such depiction of the West and the absence of African people in the texts which they are taught. And this is one of the developments that led to the protests that took place in South Africa during 2015 and 2016, where students were demanding to see themselves in the curriculum. They were concerned about the fact that they cannot connect with the content of what they were taught. And that led to the decolonization movement. And this particular debates around colonialism and decolonization and neocolonialism referring to the continued influence of the West, even though it's no longer formally in control, are still debated in higher education globally and more so in Africa. I want to highlight also the fact that there is a sense that, and this bias, that Africa is a poor continent. Africa is not a poor continent, but its people are poor because of the plundering of its resources through the illicit outflow of money to the West, the exploitation that is continuing even without the presence of the West on the continent. I need to highlight also some of the assumptions of the global North from the global South perspective, especially in the context of the conversation around collaboration. What are those assumptions which people of the South have about people of the North? The images that are being floated around in our continent about the West, the US, Canada, are those of Hollywood that give a sense that the West or the US is rich. There is no poverty in that place. People in that part of the world are all educated. There is peace. Life is easy. And when you talk to people about the fact that poverty does exist also in that part of the world, they think that you are being smart. They cannot believe you. There is also a need to focus, especially in the context of our conversation, about some of the assumptions as they relate to education, that in the West, that's where you'll find quality education, quality research, and technology is freely available, connectivity is great, and people from the North are endowed with resources. And the fact that they speak English suggests that they are intelligent or more intelligent than us. And the other assumption that is held is the fact that we need people from the North or from Europe to come and help us to lead a better life. Now, we all know that all of those assumptions are not necessarily true. We also need to deal with another bias about the fact that Africa is a country. Africa is not a country. Africa is a continent that is made up of 54 countries. And Africa is not a jungle. To say that the global South is a jungle is as prosperous as it can get. For the ruling elite in the global North to view the rest of the world through such imperial lenses is a huge indictment on their moral standing, since they claim the moral high ground in the world as the paramount embodiment of vague and disingenuous concept of democracy, human rights, and individual liberties. It is important to be aware of the realities. And as we engage in collaboration, it is important to make sure that we redress some of the asymmetries that are there in the historical partnerships that have taken place. Currently, the balance between the global north and the global south is not equitable. And we need to find authentic and sustainable balance that will bring about meaningful engagement in the partnership. Just to give some examples, when scholars from the global north engage with scholars from the global south, some important questions that need to be asked are, what counts as knowledge? Does the knowledge which a scholar from the global north viewed as more important than the knowledge from of the scholar from the global south? Which party, as we enter these partnerships, is better endowed? When coming to data collection, there is this practice of having Africa or the global south being treated as sites for data collection. However, the processing of data takes place in the global north. And within that particular context, after data has been collected, who takes ownership of the findings that are being processed and whose name appears first in the paper in case that research leads to publication? And all of these questions which I'm posing lead to the question of, is research conducted in an equitable way? And these are some of the things which the purpose of this presentation is trying to address. The knowledge gaps that are there between the North and the South. What we have done as African scholars is that we have started this organization, African Network for Internationalization of Education. And the main aim of the organization was to provide a platform for African scholars to write on the internationalization of higher education from their own experience. We have got a number of publications under our belt. This was a collaborative project that we conducted with young scholars on the ground. It's a book that is edited by myself together with Dr. Jane Knight from the University of Toronto. We have published this book that maps out the practice of student mobility of African students moving from one African country to another African country. We need to face realities, and we need to also be aware of the fact that we all have got vulnerabilities and challenges. There is more that brings us together than what divides us. We cannot proceed this way. The current challenges of climate change point to the fact that irrespective of our geographic positioning, we are all affected by this. The recent COVID pandemic that ravaged the rest of the world exposed our vulnerabilities as human beings, and the fact that we are all vulnerable, and the fact that we all need each other. There were some assumptions and also prophets of doom that COVID was going to wipe the African continent. But the African continent actually came out of the COVID pandemic much better than many parts of the world. This shows that some of the biases which you are having concerning some of the regions in the world are unfounded. The war in Ukraine that is currently going on also shows the fact that we are all vulnerable. In summary, the message which you want to pass across is the following: that we need meaningful collaboration, we need equitable collaboration. Scholars from the Global South have got something to put on the table.